Yeah, my name is Sean, and tonight we're just going to be covering just some like spirit wear, some school gear, stuff like that. We're going to use a couple different features tonight, and um, what three of the main features we're going to use is our magic patterns. So those I thought I had those open. Let me close some of these out. So we're going to use some of our magic patterns tonight. We're going to be creating our own kind of, not necessarily magic patterns, but we are going to create our own patterns that we're going to then use as a power clip. And then lastly, we're going to be going over some more of the magic tools and just, how it can help with when we're designing like this. Now, we've already covered a lot of the features of the magic tab, but we'll show you again while you're designing how you can use these features. Yeah, Pillar, I'll definitely. I know Matt helped her with that, so let me get with him and see what he did. If not, I can just make like a quick like little video for it. So here's some of the designs we're going to be making. So we'll start over here with our first template right here. So have you guys used the magic patterns before? Did you guys even know about the magic patterns? Just in webinars? Okay. No, a little bit, yes. Okay. So what's really cool about the magic patterns is not only are you going to get the patterns that separate right through your design, but any of the patterns that you have are now, you can now extract the clip art from them and have brand new designs just from the clip art. So I'll show you what I mean by that just real quick. Is if I buy the sports one with the football, I'll get this one here that has a lot of different players in it. So we have a couple linemen, center, QB, wide receiver. So once I have all these, a running back, once I have all these, I can use my Smart Fill feature, click inside these different images, and now I have a collection of sports clip art. So I have my football receiver, my running back, my center, you can say maybe a defensive lineman, and my quarterback. So pretty good amount of positions right there. And then of course we can just rotate them. So now I can start using any of this clip art in any type of design or any type of football design moving forward. So what we're going to do tonight is our first design here. We're going to create this design using mostly magic patterns, and then another way we'll just use some pretty much just some regular shapes from Corel. So the first thing we're going to do is just write out love. For this example, we're going to use the sports block font. So once I have that written out, now I'm just going to go ahead and use the B up here and break those apart. So now I have these two here. I'm just going to move my V and E right underneath. And then I'm going to get rid of my O. Now, I know that I'm going to add an outline to these, so I'm going to space them just a little bit more apart. That way, when I select all three of these, I'm going to go to my place and fill. We're going to do one island to the outside. We're going to do a contour 0.15, and we're just going to click island fill. So that's a little bit bigger than I wanted, so we'll move this back down to 0.07. So again, we want to highlight all three. It looks a little bit better. I'm going to raise this L just a little bit more. Actually, I'm just going to do the one border. So we'll leave it just like this. We'll go ahead and select the outsides, and we'll go ahead and just make those our dark purple, or dark red. And then the inside, we're just going to make that light gray for now. So now I'm going to go over my magic patterns. I'm going to go to my dog paws. So it's going to be our pack right here. And to see like everything in the pattern, you just need to draw a square or any type of shape, just about 10 inches wide. And you're just going to click on the pattern. And that will, this one's just the one paw, so I didn't really have to make it this big. But normally to see most of the designs, anywhere from like 10 to 12 inches wide, usually you can see most of the pattern. So I'm going to use my Smart Fill tool, and I'm just going to extract a paw right from our design. And then I can go ahead and delete that. Make it just a little bit bigger. Rotate it just a bit. And then I'm going to weld that paw together just so it's all one. So now we're going to add the same outside. So we're going to go to place and fill 1. I think we did 0.07. Island fill. And it's going to be a reverse of the color. So this one's just the outside on this one will be that light gray. Alright, so any questions on extracting or using the patterns, or just extracting the patterns? So now we're going to get into more of applying the patterns. And this is where it's going to be, so to access your magic patterns, you're just going to go up to the same area with your live template editor and select TRW magic patterns. Now the top 7 you see here with the hearts, the circles, and the stars, those are all free. Those come with the software. The additional patterns you can get off of our site. So they're broken up into little mini packs pretty much with the different patterns. So there's holidays, there's sports, there's religion, there, a bunch of different, we call them paisleys. We got the different seasons. So there's a lot. The distress, that one's really popular. So we have a lot of different patterns through here. All right. So when we're using the patterns, I'm going to move that off to the side for a second. Let's go back down to our dog pattern. So when I showed you earlier, we wanted to make that square really big so we could see the entire pattern through our design. So if I have a smaller box and I select, let's go ahead and make a copy real quick, and I select the dog paws, we'll add a little color to these, you can see that it only gives me, one solid paw and then a few others. So what it's going to do when you actually apply the pattern to your shape or your object, it's going to simply subtract that pattern right through. So if I have a design or that same box, if it's a lot bigger and I do the same design, you'll notice how you get a lot more of the pattern in that design. So the same thing's going to work with the design we're using here. So if I have my L right now, it's only sized to about 2.5 inches tall by almost 2 inches wide. So if I apply a pattern to this, you barely see, a third of the paw. So that's that cutting through. So when we apply these patterns and we're working with the vector designs, we need to make them a little bit bigger. So my entire design right now is 16 inches wide by almost 20 inches tall. So this L by itself is almost 7 inches wide and 8.5 inches tall. So now when I do the same thing, same pattern, you'll see a lot more of those paws show up in your pattern. So if you still want to see more, you'll need to make this even bigger, select the same pattern, and then you'll see a lot more. Right. So just like that, it cuts that out. So now this is my top piece, and then I have the red behind it. Now I always like using two colors when I'm using the pattern, just because I think it usually looks a little bit better when there's a background color to it. So same thing with like our V here. If I didn't have this outline to it, well, I always like to add like a little bit of an outline. If not, you can do a copy and paste. That way you have two layers right on top. And then I'll change this top layer, select a pattern, and you'll see how it's cut out. But usually when you have a two-tone design, it looks a lot better than just the one color that you see here. So on our E, we're just going to select the top. We're going to go to our hearts, just like that. Now again, if I think that's too many, or I don't want to weed this many hearts in this design, no problem. I just make my design a little bit smaller, select the same, and now I have larger hearts and they're not as many to weed. All right, so our last one, we're just going to kind of create our own pattern. So I'm just going to do a rectangle, and then I'm going to go to my edit tab, going to go to my copy selected, I'm going to make this 0.5. I'm just going to hit down on my arrow, and I'm going to make, about 10 copies and weld all those together. Selected the V. We don't want to select the V. So weld all those together. And then I'm going to, I have it selected now. I'm going to click it one more. You'll see the arrows around my design, and then I'm just going to rotate this up, come across my design here. I'm going to select the top part here, hold shift, and select the silver or gray behind, and then a back minus front, and then it's just going to give me that look just like that. So we had a question if it's worth it to have this back color as glitter. And yeah, with the magic trap, that shouldn't be too bad. So you would just take your top layer, select both, pretty much both layers, select magic trap, taking it completely out. Yeah, I'll have to look into that because it's not. That one's even weirder. Do you have to make the gray convert outline to object? No, this part here is already. See what it is. let me try something real quick. So let's go ahead and fix this real quick. Go ahead, back minus front. And I'm going to add just a small layer to this, or outline to it. Yeah, so there's something going. Yeah, something's going on with this little piece up here. I think it's might be the reason why. Let me see if the one I use here, that's not a magic trap, or not a magic pattern. Yeah, that one worked fine. So it must be something with these magic patterns. We'll have to look into them, where it's not letting me trap it correctly. This one does half of it. This one worked right, but that was the manual one we did. Yeah. Well, when I welded the gray, it closed it, so that's why I think something else is going on with it too, because it closed half of this one up top. So I'll have to check on these patterns just to make sure. Now this one, it didn't do anything. So let's weld this. Magic trap. Yeah, I'll have to look at that for you. All right, so now that we have our design set up like this, the last part we did was just type our Bulldogs. Just a nice script font. So our Stadium font works well, or the Pacifico. That's always a good script font too. Go ahead and go to our envelope feature. We're going to go to add new, and we're going to do the single arc. So that's the one in the middle left right here. We're going to hold control, lift straight up. That's going to give it a nice arc. Go ahead and weld that. And then just rotate that in. Make it a little bit smaller. And then once we have that set up, we use our live template editor, magic boundary, set that to about 0.03, contour, and remove shapes behind. And that's just going to trim all that for us. So that's going to be our finished design there. So any questions on the magic patterns or anything on creating the first design here? Yeah. So you're gonna get all the designs. So what I can do too, just in case it's not you want the paw, but it's not necessarily like the Bulldogs, I'll add the paw in there too before we actually what I'll do is just let me go back. Go ahead and make a copy of that. That's what it's going to look like at the end. So another way to like kind of utilize this design or even the love design is like, let's say we want to do the same design, but now we wanted to do it for or like a football team instead. So I could go to my magic patterns, find my football. Let's say I had a helmet like this, smart fill. Go ahead and remove that. Bring in our helmet. Go ahead and make this our secondary color. And then our L here. Let's go ahead and bring that in. And then instead on this one, we could just use, oh, let's blow it up first. And then I could come back with random footballs, my players, you know, these footballs scattered around like that. Let's make this outline a little bit bigger too. And then we have pretty much same design, different magic pattern. So once, you know, any clip art we have, we can, any of these love designs we can easily make now. Any questions before we move to our next one? All right. Move those ones over here. Go ahead and resize them real quick. All right. So the next one we'll do is our Mustangs here. So this is actually going to be glitter and stones. Now, that like clip art elements you see in this one isn't actually a magic pattern, but we're going to kind of create our own pattern from different clip art. And instead it's called a power clip. So has anyone used the power clip feature before? All right, so with vinyl, we probably don't use it too much just because it inserts like a pattern on top of an object. So like for printing, anything like printing wise, it works really well. But we actually have a tool in the software, and it's a really cool tool, but we really don't cover it that much. But so tonight I'll show you how we can actually use it and create our own. Now they're not going to be exactly like the magic patterns, but once we have it built, I kind of like it a little bit better than the patterns because we have more control over how it's going to look on our design. Because the one thing with our magic patterns is I can't, once I have my box laid out like this, I can't control where my shapes go. So I can't control the pattern. Every time it's going to be that same layout. When we create our own and use the power clip, we can set it up, change the color, anything we want, and it makes it a lot easier. So the first thing we're going to do is just start with our M. So we'll just do uppercase M, and again, the sports block on a design like this works well, or any type of college font. So we're just going to make that M, and we'll make it about 9 inches wide, because what we're going to do next on our magic tab, we're going to hit stone outline with contour, and just the contour will be set to 0.17. The Mustangs, is it not welded? It might not be. No, it's welded now. Except it was grouped, so everything is welded. There we go. So someone just mentioned my colors to the right get cut off. How do I fix it? We have a video. I actually made a video going through the breakdown of fixing this. What you're going to do is go to your magnifying glass, and you'll see close 1, close 2, open 1, open 2. What that's referring to is if it's a 1 or 2 color or 1 or 2 row of color palette. So when you're in a different one, like the Easy Weed, it has 2 rows. Now when I close this and I switch to one color and go back to Easy Weed, you'll notice how this looks fine. If I open this, it looks good now too. So what you sometimes will happen if you switch through different ones and open and close this, you just have to switch to a pattern and then or a different row or a different vinyl color and come back, and it will fix that issue. So what you'll have to do though is you're going to go close 1, and you're going to find a closed color palette, or you're going to have your font windows closed. So that's going to be closed 1, and then you're going to look for a color palette that just has 1 row. If that looks good, then you don't have to adjust this number. If it's cut off like this, so right now we have our font window closed. I'm in 1 row. I'm in my color palette only has 1 row to it, and it's cut off like this. So I need to switch this to 315, hit update, and now that looks good. So next I would go to close 2. So it's closed, so I go to my Easy Weed. Now again, I have mine set up so they're right, but let's say it was at 315. I hit update. Now it's cut off a bit. No problem. I just come back. 325, update, good. Now open, and the open 1 and 2 just refers to it when it's your font windows open. But if you have this set up and you go through one, and for some reason it's not doing it for me now, of course. Let me open and close it again and see. So I'm going to open this. Okay, so everything is set up like it's supposed to. I just opened my font window, and now half of my colors are gone, or I can't see them that well. Everything's set up fine. You don't have to go back to your magnifying glass and edit. At this point, go to a different color, go back to the one you need, and it will fix it. So sometimes when you open up this font window, it could adjust your color palette a little bit, but as long as you have it set up, you'll just switch to one color and then back to the one, and it should adjust it for you. But initially you will need to set this up, and we have a video on our YouTube channel walking you through that. All right, so now we have our M. We're going to go to our Magic tab. Hey Peggy, no problem, welcome. We're just on our second design, so the recorded version will be up tomorrow, so you'll be able to catch that first one as well. So what we did here is we made the M around 9 inches. Now, depending on your overall size, just go in a little bit, because what we're doing is adding a stone outline with a contour. So that's just a one-click button now. So it's not going to the one thing, it's going to lay the stones for us, but we're still going to have to go through our design and just, make sure everything looks good. So on these stones here, I'm just going to go ahead and move that down just like that. Got a little overlap, so our corners will still be overlapping. So what I can do as well is highlight all my stones, mark the top ones red, go ahead and pull those out and hit delete, and then I'll just come back and move that 1 or 2 stones where needed. So everything else looks good there. All right, so that's going to be the first part of design. So again, now that's just a one-click button. Before, we were pretty much adding or setting up our boundary, then adding the stones, and it was probably about 7 to 10 steps just to get the look we have right here. So our next part is going to be setting up our design, our clip art to create the power clip. So let's go ahead and just make this a blue so it stands out a little bit. So at this point, I want to go to my live template editor. I'm going to click add artwork, and I'm going to go to my live template 3, and I'm just going to get my simple clip art from here. So I'm going to pull in a few different sports. So I'm actually going to do, instead of doing it one by one, I just have it opened here. So I'm going to pull them in. I'll show you how to do the first one. We would just do add artwork, live template 3. Just select the ball you want to use, the soccer ball, it will come in. So instead of doing it for all 5, I just have them up right here. So I'm just going to pull the rest in real quick. All right, so I just brought in a couple sports ball here. So what I like to do is kind of size these up to be more realistic. So the football, something like that. The volleyball, pretty good size there. Soccer ball, make it a little bit bigger, about the same size as the volleyball. Baseball, we're going to make a little bit smaller. And let's go ahead. We can add hockey in here too. And we'll make that a bit smaller too. So I like making them kind of realistic shapes just because, or sizes, just because 1, it's more realistic, and then 2, it gives us like little area, when we have these little areas we need to fill, it's nice to have different shapes and sizes to use. So what we're doing is kind of creating our own pattern. Hey Jesse, welcome. So there doesn't necessarily have to be, an exact pattern. I kind of just start playing around and doing a copy and paste of a couple different sports balls, seeing how they look in different areas. We can rotate if we need, but we're just kind of building our own. And then once we have, something that looks pretty good, instead of just keep going and going and going, what I'll do is just make a solid copy. Actually, let's add another volleyball down here. So what I'll do now is just make a copy. Don't want to get those stones. Put it right next to the one I had. Just like that. Go ahead and flip this one. Move that one up just like that. Now again, now I have a little bit of gap here, so maybe grab a hockey and a football just to throw in those areas. So now here I have a nice pattern. I'm going to weld it all together. And now we can apply our power clip. So what we're going to do, and let's use, yeah, we'll just use a little bit of a lighter blue. So we're going to, I've welded all the sports balls together. We're going to right click, and up top you'll see power clip inside. So then we're going to select the object we want. So I'm just going to, you see the arrow here. I'm just going to left click on the blue part of the M. And it's going to throw my sports balls in there just like that. Thank you, Kara. I appreciate it. So now this is where we have a lot more control. So this is a power clip. So to edit my power clip, down here, when you highlight over it or select that object. So right now, if I move this M, it just reads it as one object. So what we want to do is we're going to edit first. And you can see how big my pattern is compared to my M. So I can size this down, hit OK, and now you can see how there's a lot more sports balls in this design. And with the edit too, you can change the color. So it will, if I change it all white, it will show up as white sports balls instead. Now this design, it looks really cool when you have like a lot of these different balls in it at once. But if we're using this for vinyl, that's a lot of weeding and picking out little parts. So we don't necessarily want that. Now printing wise, we can have the entire pattern where it looks pretty cool. So what we want to do is kind of find, and I'm going to turn this black just so we can see it a little bit more. Just that area where you get a good amount of the sports balls through the design. And this one you can see there's volleyball and volleyball right next to each other. So maybe I don't like the way that's set up. So I can bring it down this way. And now I have a completely different layout. And that's what I see instead. So I like this layout a lot more. It gives me a little bit more variety of the balls and they're not right on top of each other. All right. And you can still change the color of the M as well. So that's just going to be your regular color. Yeah, you can do this with words. You can do it, any object, any picture you could do this with. So that's what's cool about the power clip. Now, to make it, if you're working with vinyl, you can't use a picture because it's a picture is meant to be printed, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a vectorized object. Like let's say I went to Google and I just Googled sports wallpaper. So let's say I had this clip art right here, or this image right here. I could go to copy image. Let's go ahead and I'm going to hit extract contents. That's going to remove all those. And you'll see when you do that, you'll see an X going through your M now. That's just there to let you know that when you drop an object in there now, it will power clip right to it so you don't even have to tell it. So I could blow that up so it fits the M, hit OK, and now that image would be my M. But again, I can't, vinyl wise, I can't do anything with this. But it can be a picture, it can be any vectorized. If it's a vectorized object, then we're good to work with the vinyl and stuff like that. But when it's an image like this, you'd have to have something besides just a vinyl cutter. So I'll lay this back in. Actually, let me just go back because I like the way it was set up. Now the next thing we're gonna do when we have our design in here, our power clip design, I'm gonna select it and I'm gonna add a contour to the outside. And I'll make that white. So we're going to hit OK. So that's my contour around my design. So now it already gives me that look where it's like punched out. So if I want to use this for glitter and I want to be able to layer glitter on top, now, so to get the contour, you just select the design, hit the contour up top here, and I just made that a white contour to the outside, and this adjusts the distance of that contour. So the reason I'm doing this is because it's going to save me a step later on if I just make this contour right now, especially if I want to use any type of glitter vinyl. If I don't want to use glitter, I don't necessarily have to add a contour, but if I'm going to use glitter, I'm going to need that contour. Now once that's all set up, now this is where the wizard's going to come in play. You're going to go to your Edit tab, and right here you'll see Convert Power Clip to Cuttable Vector. So you just select that part of your design, the blue, click this button right here, and now we have our top M. We have our white, so it's going to break off each piece, and now we have our black right on top. So by creating that contour, not sure why this part didn't fill correctly, but we'll fix it just like that. So now what I'm going to do, so right here on the Edit tab, this is going to be your Convert Power Clip to Cuttable Vector. So now once you do that, it separates. Now I can't go back and edit my placement anymore. So once we click that button, our whole template's gone. So if you like the pattern you created, before you actually add it to your design, and we'll do this. So I'm going to copy this. And we'll save this for you guys too, so you'll have this whole design as part of the webinar as well. But we'll want to save this pattern, or either save it or put it to the side for now, because once we don't want to have to keep recreating that every time we have that. So now select this layer, just like that. Again, I'm not sure why this one's closing out, but we're just going to smart fill that to fix it. So now by adding the contour around it, all I have to do now is select that white, hold shift, select the blue, back minus front, clear that little area out. Slow it off just a bit over here. So let's go back. Let's adjust this contour a little bit and see if that will fix our issue here. So I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. Yeah, I'm seeing if it's because it's lined up just on that line, if that's why I was throwing it off like that. So now it should be over it. So we'll go ahead, convert that. There we go. Yeah, so just making it a little bit bigger, fix that issue. So we're just going to smart fill that. Yeah, we're just just going to make it a little bit smaller and then just weld it. So now all my black is one piece. And we have the white cut out right from it now too. So now I can make this easily a glitter design and don't have to worry about any layering issues or anything like that. So the last part, we're just going to do our Mustangs text. And pretty much the same thing like the last design. Use Pacifico. We're just going to stretch that across. Go to our envelope. Same single arc, add new. Hold control, select the middle. And then we're just going to raise that right up. So let's go ahead and center this just so we know everything's good. So now what we can do too, another button that I like, we're going to group the blue and black together. So we have all the M grouped together except the stones. I don't want to group the stones. And we're going to add a contour to our design. Now once we have the contour setting to what we like, all we have to do is select that contour, go to our magic, contour punch out, and now it's punched out everything behind it. Now it didn't get the stones because I didn't want to punch out the stones. I'd rather go through. Now I can just select my design like this, mark the stones underneath that are touching. Select all the stones in my Mustang text. Mark the bottom stones because they're underneath. Alright, so that's not working, so we're just going to go to our wireframe and just get them out this way. So any of our stones that are touching, oh, you know what? Let's make that an actual object. That might have been why. So let's see now. Okay. So what I didn't do when I punch the contour was weld this together. So once we weld our text, then it becomes an object. When I mark them red now, it'll mark all those overlapping stones. Then I can get them all out at the same time. So now I have my finished design. And go to my glitter. White. So my overall design is a little bit bigger than I anticipated, so it's at 13. So we might want to start it closer about 8, 8.5, or I could have just bring it. The Mustangs is going out a lot, so I could just brought that in a little bit too. Go to our mock-ups, simulate stones. Just like that, we have our finished design. All right. So that's, that's the same, similar to our magic patterns, but this way it's the power clip instead, and it gives us a little bit more freedom. Now again, the magic patterns are really cool though because excuse me, because you can extract all those different clip art from them too, and it's just a one-click button. This requires a little bit more setup, but we can control it a little bit more and get the exact pattern we're looking for. So any questions on our second design? So you're not able to actually save or introduce your own magic patterns. It doesn't work like that. They have to be like specially programmed to work. Um, so what you need to do is just say, like, if you wanted to do like something like this, you'd have to just save those patterns. You could just call it, sports pattern one, and just save it in your own, and then you can use it as a clip art instead, or a power clip instead. Still have. All right, so go ahead and delete that. Got our Mustang design here. And this one might be a little bit more. So we'll save this one just because it's a little bit more useful with the sizing. Go ahead and make these flat real quick. Yeah, I always like to save my design in like flat colors. The glitter is mostly just for kind of showing our customers what it's going to look like, but we don't necessarily have to save it in those patterns, in those colors. Yeah. So we gotta ask: are the power clips and overlay kind of the same concept? I've seen transfers where you can add a distressed look. So yeah, it's very similar to that. It's that distressed look is just pretty much an overlay, or it's not necessarily. Yeah, it's closer to. It's definitely more of a power clip and overlay are very similar. It's not necessarily the same as a magic pattern because the pattern's actually subtracting it through. But yeah, it's very similar to something like that. And I know that's something that we're working towards as well, as to have more of that kind of look to add to your design to make it look like a vintage distressed look or something like that. And that would just be an overlay. But again, that would be set up more for like, direct to garment, stuff like that. Not It would be very hard in vinyl just because it tends to leave little pieces to weed out. All right, so next we have our field day design. So that's going to be this one right here. Now, I used a little bit of the clip art from some of our packs. So we have the crayon, that's going to come from our elementary pack, and then the sports are all from our live template volume 3. All right. So on this one, what we're going to do first is just write out our text. Oops, I wrote file day. And hopefully we can spell correctly. All right. So the font we're using on this one is called Bangers. And I just wrote both of these out together, but I'm going to hit the B up top here, and that's going to separate each text field for me. Move that over just a little bit. So I'm going to make field, make it about 8 inches, because what I'm going to do is use my text spacing, And I'm going to space these just a little bit apart. The day I'm going to leave alone, but I am going to size it so it's about the same size as field. So just like that. So the B will break apart. If you have two different words, the B will break apart each word. If we have just a single word, like field right here, if I hit the B again, it'll break apart each letter for me. So I'm going to remove the I and the L, and now I don't have to worry about, lining these up perfectly or anything like that. They're already set up as they should be. So I'm going to go to my live template editor. I'm going to go to add artwork. And the first pack we're going to be going to is our elementary live mini pack. This is where we're going to get our crayon from. So I'm just going to bring that right in. Size is pretty good already. So we're just going to select it again and just kind of rotate it a little bit to the right, just so it has that similar look of our field already. And I'm going to delete that background just because I'm going to add a background color to this anyways. We're just going to make that a one color. All right. Now for our book here, we're actually going to make that from our rectangle tool in the software. So I'm just going to draw out a little rectangle like this. We're going to go up top here. This is our shape tool. When I click that, you'll see the four corners kind of light up with these squares. And I'm just going to bring this in just a little bit, and it will do that on each side. So that's going to give me kind of the spine of my book. And then from there, rectangle tool again, shape, and we're just going to bring that all the way in so it has a rounded look just like that. I'm going to make two copies of that circle, and I'm going to bring them down just like that. Go ahead and weld them together, and then we're going to subtract it. So I have these two right here. Make them blue so we can see it. I'm going to hold shift, select the gray, back minus front, and that's just going to select or trap it right through. This up here is going to be subtracted through as well. And then next, we're just going to write a little rectangle right in there. We're going to add a little we're going to make our thickness, our outline thickness, just a little bit bigger right here. Let's go ahead and shape those just a little bit on the corners as well. And now to make this, right now when I added that pen thickness, if I go to my wireframe, it's actually, that's what we have here. So to make it actually the thickness you see here would be converting outline to object. So now in my wireframe, this is the original line we have created. You don't see the thickness. When I convert outline to object, it gets rid of that line and gives me my actual object. So I'll just subtract that through. And now we have our book. And we're just going to give it a slight rotate, just our skew, just like our first design, our crayon. We'll go ahead and make that red. All right. So from here, we're just going to add a little bit of color to it. Some green, pink, blue. Same thing down here. We're going to break apart each one. We're just going to do blue, red, and green. Now with these, again, you could use the glitter. I'm kind of setting this up knowing that I'm probably going to use Easy Weave for this instead. But at the end, if you wanted, you could just use the magic trap like we did in the first design and set it up for glitter if you wanted to. So I'm just going to select all three, or the field up top here. I'm going to go to my place and fill. Don't want to add stones. We're going to set this to about 0.15. One island to the outside. Island fill. That looks pretty good like that. And I'm actually probably going to move these in just a tad to each other. I'll make that a little bit bigger. The reason I did that is because I'm going to weld all my backgrounds together, and that way it's an easier weed when they're all touching like that. And then we're just going to make that background just black, just like that. So same thing on the day, island fill, just come through and group or weld all those together. Sorry if I said group before, I meant weld. Move that to the back layer, and then the black there will weld too. So just like that, we have our pretty much the base of our design set up, and then we can again just do our add artwork. And since I actually already have them all in this design, I'm just going to use our Smart Fill. Baseball. Move this out real quick. Baseball. The football I'm just going to bring in because it's got a few different parts to it, so it's just going to be faster just going to add artwork. Live template 3. Football. And we can add our tennis ball too. So again, I'm going to try to kind of size these up so they're relative to the actual size of their sport. So I'm just going to kind of tuck this this football here, soccer ball. Just going to make that solid black. We'll move that to the back. Tennis ball, just going to put up here to the front. I'm just going to add a little. Now, when I'm done with this design, right now I'm just going to kind of give it the look that we're going for. But all I would have to do to get this cut ready or separate my tennis ball to get the same look as what you see right here is just to select that tennis ball, remove shapes behind in Magic Boundary. The reason I'm not doing it is because I don't want it to, well, I guess we don't have any live text in this design, so I can just set it up just like that. So let's go ahead and Magic Boundary, and that will just trim it just like that. Make that green. So we got our baseball here. Just going to kind of throw that right in the middle. Make that red. Magic Boundary. And then we got our basketball up here. We'll just kind of tuck that in right up here. Make that our orange. Magic Boundary. And I might black here. Magic Boundary. And that will just cut away from my soccer and football over here. So we can make this an actual like brown or something if we wanted to. Or I just kind of made it the blue, so it saved us an extra color from having to press. So now we have our field day. And then our last part, we're just going to go to our text effect, apply. It's going to add my text just like that. I'm going to make it a little scrunched, bring it to the bottom, go out a little bit wide, and then I can just name this any school that I want. And then if I need to, can add a little boundary here as well, just to kind of give it that two-color look. Make that green with a white